Why is security logging and monitoring so difficult to get right? If you go talk to 10 CISOs, all of them will tell you that logging and monitoring is one of their biggest challenges and just problems, things that keep them up at night. To understand, it's really important to start with the psychology of a security team. They never know what log is going to matter, and they are always, there's more visibility to get, always. It's kind of the Sisyphusian task of as soon as you collect one log, there's a new log that pops up that you didn't even know about. And that's because companies are dynamic and they're always changing. And so your logs that you care about are always changing too. But it ends up meaning that you hoard a bunch of data for a long time. Once you hoard all of that data, then there's compliance requirements that make this really challenging to deal with. You need to be monitoring for things, which means searching the data, responding to incidents, and making use of the data. But at the same time, you need to keep that data for a really long time, usually more than a year. This is a really unique data problem that security teams have, where they have just buckets of data. They have oodles of data, and they need to search it. Sometimes they need to search the entirety of the data set. And it's really challenging from a data engineering perspective. So when you have a bunch of data and you need fast search, the first way that people manage this requirement is they add indexes to their data. And what indexes are essentially is pre-computing data structures to help you traverse your data quickly. And this is done at ingest time because you need to build a big data structure in order to know when you run a query, how do I find the data that I care about? And indexes can be something that's very expensive if done wrong. It can be something that has major performance impact if done wrong. And even if done right, there can be major costs in the form of compute that it incurs when you ingest more data. And so having to manage your own indexes and is kind of a big foot gun when it comes to your own data management. And so it's obvious that you want to do things like index by time, but then other things that you might think are low cardinality and you add an index for that kind of might not be. There's all sorts of surprises when you go and start managing these indexes yourself to try to speed up your search on a year's worth of data. And it causes a lot of issues. The next is thing that people do is they start increasing the complexity of their overall stack. So instead of ingesting all of their data into where they're storing it, they might put some of it in an S3 bucket and just search it when they need it. Or they might put it in a different system. And so if you're not indexing that data and just storing it in an S3 bucket, it's going to be really slow and hard to get the data you want to and expensive. If you need to run a bunch of searches, tools like Athena and BigQuery are quite expensive. But then if you're doing other things like having multiple places that you're putting the data and multiple tools that you're putting the data, that duplication ends up taking cycles and slowing you down when you need to investigate something or when you need to glue certain tables together or correlate certain log sources. So it ends up being very challenging to try to fix these issues yourself. Where do we go from here? It's really important that everybody's working to simplify their stack in order to see their way through this. Having a bunch of different tools that all talk to one another and hoping that it works well is kind of a fool's errand. You know, you can get three people in a room and they can't agree on much, let alone the 3,000 people who helped build all of the tools that you're using. So trying to get all of these things working properly when you have a bunch of different tools is a big challenge. The next is it's really important that you're able to say no to certain data sets. And that comes from knowing what risks you're really worried about and understanding what data that you have that matters to you. I think it's really easy to say we need complete coverage and just keep collecting data and never making use of it. But it's really from understanding your business's risks that you understand what data you need to collect, to understand what type of monitoring you need. And then lastly, it's really important to recognize that all of this data engineering stuff is a series of trade-offs. There's no free lunches. If somebody promises you lightning fast search, that means that they're doing a ton of indexing up front. If somebody promises you really low pricing, that means that search is going to be terrible. terrible experience, super slow, and it's because they're not doing any indexing up front and they're essentially just storing your logs in a bucket. The truth is that it's a balancing act, and you need a system that's flexible enough to support super fast in one, and maybe it's slower in the other. And so it comes from understanding your data and understanding what you're optimizing for, that you're able to get a solution that works for you. So I hope this helps. This is my 2 cents at least. I think a lot of security people just want their data stack to work, and then they start buying tools and they end up realizing that they spent a lot of money and things aren't working. So maybe this resonated with you. Thanks.